Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Small Biz Diaries. We're so close to finishing off season one, our first 20 episodes, and I just want to thank each and every one of you for being here and supporting us. So, if you're here to tune in on this episode, I'm Esperanza, your host, and I'm here to introduce a powerhouse guest, Stephanie Wharton, who's on a mission to help underrepresented voices shine just a bit brighter in the world of public speaking and visibility. Steph's passion lies in empowering Latinas, BIPOC, queer, and neurodivergent individuals to embrace their speaker identity, share their unique stories, and amplify their impact. Chapter 18 is all about visibility and overcoming the fear of being seen. We delve into Steph's inspiring journey from her shy beginnings, which she has never really talked about, to becoming a visibility coach and speaker championing diversity. If you've ever hesitated to share your story or you felt unsure in big or small ways about how to take up space as a business owner, this episode is your guide to starting small, staying authentic, and creating a lasting impact. Let's dive in. Welcome back, as you've heard, to Small Biz Diaries. It's another new episode, and we have the wonderful Steph Wharton here. We're excited to talk all about visibility and overcoming the fear of being seen as an entrepreneur, as a small business owner, whether it's you're starting off your business at the very beginning or even throughout many years of being a small business owner. The topic of being seen through different forms of communication, forms of presentations, forms of just expressing yourself is just an ongoing topic. So I'm excited to kind of dive into this a little bit deeper with Steph and her journey as a small business owner. So thank you again, Steph, for being here. I'm super happy and grateful to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited for this conversation. I feel like we're going to have a lot of fun, and I'm going to share with everybody else. I'm a little bit sad. We almost matched with plaid, and I'm the only one. So I'm kind of like, okay, it's okay. I'll bring the energy. Like, we'll be good.
Yes, the fall energy, which I mean, this episode will be coming out around like fall, end of fall, beginning of winter. So it's like the perfect time. It would have been like stars aligned, everything with the outfit choices, but yeah, no, just missed opportunity by like a slight bit.
I know. I think it just shows we're very in sync, though.
Yes, exactly. But I am excited to start things off with just the fact that prior to being, Steph Visibility Coach, you were in insurance, right?
Yeah. I did that for just under 7 years. And funnily enough, like, it wasn't my direction. It wasn't where I was planning to end up, nor was it insurance, nor was it entrepreneurship. It's just one of those things that just naturally ended up happening. Like, I did go to school for business, but entrepreneurship was one of those things that I guess it just led me through like such a random, I want to say like combination of steps or like journeys or people that I met, because through school, I met somebody that I ended up living with. They ended up introducing me to somebody in insurance, and turns out somebody was going away on mat leave. So I took that mat leave opportunity as a way to just get a job and get my foot in the door. And it led to 7 years of building this career, which led to then entrepreneurship. And I'm just like, how is it that all these small, seemingly random moments in time, people that you're meeting, can completely change your life? And it's just like, yeah, and in insurance and now visibility. And it's like, there's no connection point. Like, if you were to just look at it on paper, it's like, how did you even get here? But it's like, no, I honestly think it's almost people. It's all about the relationships and the connections, conversations that you end up having.
Yeah, I love that you said that though, because I feel like more often than not, we hear the opposite. Like, oh, I connected the dot with this one thing that I was doing and it had like a creativity element to it or a design element to it. And now I'm a brand designer. Like, sometimes you have more of those like small little connect the dot moments. But in your case, it was more of just like the people connecting the dots and or the small little random moments that were happening that ended up getting you to where you are now. I mean, walk me through that. Like, how did that take a turn for Steph all those years ago?
For sure. Are we going back? Do you want me to go back to like how insurance kicked it all off, or how entrepreneurship kicked things off?
Let's go with entrepreneurship.
Perfect. I feel like that's the more exciting story for me. It was burnout. Like, I did love my job to a certain extent. I loved the people. I had such an amazing team, but I went through so many years where I was experiencing a lot of burnout. And as I was taking on more and more and more work, and the market got really complicated, and we just had had to, as a team, really just pull through and come together, work longer hours, take on more projects and more tasks within each client and project, I ended up experiencing a lot of anxiety, a lot of just the stress ended up leading to like panic attacks. And it just led to this headspace where I just couldn't handle it anymore, slash I didn't want to. I didn't want that to be my day-to-day life. I'm like, this is very unhealthy and felt very toxic. So I was trying to find an outlet. And at first, that outlet really just looked like me finding any kind of course or just something that I could pick up as a hobby. I'm like, let me just learn some skill or expose myself to something completely different. So then I can like essentially shut my brain off after work and put it into something entirely different that could maybe bring me a little bit of joy, creativity, spark something in me. And I started that with, I mean, I learned so many different things, but I started primarily through design, just getting creative and designing logos for fun and trying my hand at illustration. They were all random skills that I had loved as a child to just like doodle and do things like that were very much creative. But it ended up leading to me realizing through these courses and just the online world as a whole that I started to become more and more and more exposed to that this could actually be a business. And I was like, well, this is kind of cool. Like I can have a side business while I try and make the most out of my career. Like, oh my goodness. And it just opened up my eyes to a whole new reality.
Hold on, I'm going to take a second and I'm not going to pause, but there's someone literally like blowing leaves, like a leaf blower outside my window.
Oh no.
And I'm like, of course that would happen while we're recording an episode. And I want to record it because I'm just like, the story of nomadic, like, podcast recording, where literally like there's a leaf blower and we're recording an episode.
That's ridiculous.
I know, like I just story of my life. That's the one thing of like not having a podcast studio or like a set space is just there's always something that ends up coming up. Not all the time it's that like distracting, but still.
Yeah. Luckily, I can't even hear it. Surprisingly, good. You'd think that would be like very loud and aggressive, but
yeah, good. Okay, good. But yes, I appreciate you walking me through that because I think that like a lot of people, like for example, you're not doing design work right now. Like that was just something that opened up your eyes to the opportunities or the possibilities that are out there to be your own boss slash have work outside of your work that flexes different muscles in your brain or just gets you out of your routine. Like there's so many different reasons that people just start picking up, you know, these side hustles or hobbies. But sometimes you don't have to like stay in that lane, right? You just end up realizing that that's an opportunity. Check it out, see how you do, you know, see, even put yourself out there, you know, talking about visibility, like putting yourself out there and then find something else. Or, you know, maybe that leads you to another person that connects you somewhere with something that's like, oh, that's actually interesting too. Or I didn't know that that was an opportunity that's also out there. So that's all to say that I wanted to highlight that part of your story because I think it's so important because obviously now you're doing something completely different than some of those things that you've mentioned.
Yeah, I think we honestly put so much pressure on ourselves. It probably comes with a lot of the condition that we experience throughout our lives. Like when you go to school, for example, there's so much pressure to carry through with a program and get your diploma, your degree, whatever. And it's almost like if you don't do that, if you drop out or you change your mind, it's almost like frowned upon. It's like you failed. Like, how are you going to then get your life together and get a career if you can't even make up your mind on something as quote unquote, which is not simple, but quote unquote simple as just getting a degree, just graduating. And I feel like we carry that forward a lot with entrepreneurship, where it's like, okay, you start a business and now you have to succeed and you have to sign a lot of clients and make tons of money and all these things and just stick to it. And it's like, well, why? Like you said, like a lot of these experiences, they can just be stepping stones. They can just be skills that you now add to your tool belt. And now they're going to make whatever else you do, if it's another business or a slight shift, maybe you change niches or specialties or whatever that might be, you now have all these skills that are going to allow you to do things with more courage and with more confidence. And that is so beautiful in itself. It's not failure. It's literally all the grunt work that got you to where you are now or where you can be tomorrow.
Yeah. And I mean, Steph that was doing the, you know, design work or the VA or admin work is just that Steph was still, you know, navigating her own version of like being seen at that time, right? I'm sure like you're putting your yourself out there to say, hey, I have these services available, or I'm doing this, like if there's anything that you can do to support, like starting those to navigate those feelings and conversations around being seen. How did that feel at the time? Obviously separate to what you're doing now. Like how were you navigating those feelings of like, I'm putting myself out there?
It's definitely the undertones of that either little bit of doubt, a little bit of like scared feelings, whatever that might be, maybe even unworthiness to a certain extent. Like those themes definitely pop up. I feel like they never, at least in my case, and with a lot of my clients, they never truly go away. Like I'm thinking even somebody specifically I was talking with recently who have so much public speaking experience, but now they were coming to me because they wanted to build more confidence with one specific medium. And it's just like, see, the fears never really go away. Like for me specifically, now I've been getting a lot louder with my mission and the change that I want to help create in the world, right? Like I would love to see more diversity on speaker lineups in both virtual and in-person events. And to do that on its own is scary because those conversations, they're not being had as often as you would hope. Every now and then I come across somebody who's like saying the same thing and I'm like, yes, this is amazing. Like we get to like uplift each other and like amplify each other's voices. And most of the time, no, I just see a lot of events where it's all either white folks or a lot of men, and just like the diversity, whether it's visible or invisible, is just not there. So for me, that's one of those examples where yes, I can have 5 years experience in the online like service providing world where I've done the thing, I've shown up on Instagram, I've done a lot of different marketing platforms, I've done the lives, like the interviews, the public speaking, I've done so many things. And still when I'm doing something new, it's like, this is hard. Like you got to like commit and recommit over and over and over again to what you believe in.
And flex, like really like practice that muscle or flex that muscle. I feel like when you're in that zone of discomfort at the very beginning or fear, it's a lot louder, it's a lot more amplified because it's not something you're used to. But as soon as you, like you said, start practicing in different ways or putting yourself out there in different ways, it's almost like you're familiar with that discomfort a bit more and you're like, okay, like I can do this. I did this before. Like I could probably work through these emotions again, which is the beautiful part of it. And the beautiful part of incorporating that into your entrepreneurial and small biz journey is just like really trying to continue to flex those muscles as much as possible. But as a visibility coach, I would love to ask you, what does visibility specifically mean to you and or to your clients?
Yeah, I think everybody has a different interpretation of visibility, different representation of taking up space, of public speaking, of all the things. And I mean, ultimately for me, it's about taking up space in whatever capacity, in whatever ways you want to do that. So literally, I've worked with folks in the past who wanted support with their visibility, and it was all about emailing and blogging. And anybody else would be like, excuse me, like that's not you being visible. Like there's no video, there's no talking, there's none of that, right? But at the end of the day, you're using your voice. And if you're using your voice and sharing your message, that is you being visible. People are running into your content, into your story, into your message. And if you're doing that, and you're building brand awareness and you're building a reputation, you're even getting to practice your thought leadership, right? As you share your own opinions and your own perspectives, as opposed to regurgitating a lot of the content that you might already be able to find online. And I think that's really what visibility is about your ability to step into your own role as a leader, as a thought leader in particular, and share your message with people. So if it's video, amazing. If it's written form, incredible. If it's speaking on stages in person, that's so cool. Like go you, that is so empowering. If it's speaking virtually on podcasts or doing collaborations on Instagram, like again, that is amazing. It's all different creative forms of being visible and taking up space.
Yeah. And I think before we were chatting, for context, folks, I think this is a prime example of how people have different definitions and perspectives when it comes to visibility and or public speaking. Steph has things booked in 2025 and she recently posted something about that. And the way I perceived it, received it, because of my definition, I thought, oh, she has a public speaking engagement in 2025. But we were talking about this and it's just, there's different definitions to that, right? Like speaking engagement is very different or could be very different than public speaking. And so tell us a little bit about that, because I think that's a good segue into the visibility component of it and like the terminology that helps people make this a bit more tangible to them, where it's not so intimidating to encompass public speaking.
Definitely, yeah. I do run into that a lot where folks think that either visibility, public speaking, or speaking engagements, any of those terms interchangeably, that they are basically exclusively looking like people speaking at in-person events. So you're speaking at a big conference on a stage, you're the only one up there, and there's like thousands of people in front of you, and like the light is literally shining on your face, and you're
You
like,
have to
oh
imagine them
my.
naked or something. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just like, no, 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 no. Like that definitely is public speaking. That is totally a speaking engagement and a way to be visible. However, that's the more traditional image that a lot of people would think of, which is totally awesome. What speaking engagements also get to be like is any opportunity where you are sharing your story. You're likely collaborating with somebody else and you're sharing your story in front of new audiences. So when you think about it from that lens, any speaking engagement could qualify as an in-person event. It could be a virtual summit or conference. It could be a podcast interview. It could be doing a guest training or coaching inside of another coaching program. It could be speaking inside of like a free community, whether it's a Facebook group, Slack, Discord, whatever that might be, right? It's you just sharing your knowledge and your stories and your perspectives in front of other people. So it could be a joint Instagram live, right? Those are speaking opportunities. So if you want to label those as public speaking, you absolutely have the right to do so. It doesn't have to be this very out of reach, like I'm not ready to be a public speaker. You're literally a speaker just because you're sharing your story right now. So you get to do it in tangible ways that feel a little bit more, let's say, if you want to call them small, sure, they're not small, but we can start there, right? If that helps your nervous system just get a little bit more comfortable with the idea, sure, start with smaller speaking engagements. Start with something that just you've experienced a little bit less resistance so you can embrace that speaker identity that's already within you.
Yeah, and it feels a lot more organic in the way that you can do things that create visibility for you that resonate with you and that feel like this is a good way to reach my potential audience. And like you said, it doesn't necessarily need to be an onstage corporate event. You know, it could be a Facebook Live, it could be a collaborative social media, something with another person that's also within the same space as you, whatever ends up kind of molding for you and feeling and resonating with you. So thank you. I'm glad that we were able to kind of break that down because again, you have a story to share. Like there is something behind what it is, and it can maybe help you feel a little less intimidated to share it because it's your story and it's unique to you, and that's important.
Yeah, I think what you just touched on is so important too. Just the aspect that you can collaborate with somebody you know, you can collaborate with a friend. It's not even just the size or how intense or not a speaking opportunity in itself might feel, but it's who you're partnering up with. Like one of the things that I actually challenge my clients with is to find business besties, because when you really like start to leverage community collaborations, like you literally get you build your entire business that way. Like sure, you can do the traditional marketing, like we all do. I still recommend that. But if you can lean even more heavily on the things that feel like more fun, like collaborating with your besties, like just doing cool, different creative things with your community, now all of a sudden you're all coming together with a common goal. You're sharing each other's platforms, each other's communities, and you all get to expand together, which feels really freaking amazing for us to then be able to, I don't know, look back 5 years from now and be like, remember when we did that thing? Like, look where we are now. Like, we all got to essentially, like, if you want to use the term scaling or growing or whatever, we got to like scale together and just bring our friends alongside in this amazing ride.
Yeah, which is why I think community is so important within that space, like whether it's a biz bestie or a community in general, because it makes you feel like challenged by others as well in a good way, supported by others. And if someone else is, you know, getting asked to be on a podcast or doing a Facebook Live, you almost feel like, okay, like, is there an opportunity for me to do that as well within my own space? And you feeling encouraged by that versus being in a space or place where you, because you're sitting in that fear of not wanting to be seen, feeling lonely or feeling like there is no opportunity for me out there for my business or where I'm at. Like when you're around community that is influencing that or supporting that or also in that same space, it's almost like feels a little less intimidating.
Yeah. Yeah, I
So,
think it does a really good job at like eliminating the feeling that there's hierarchy too. It's just like, no,
mhm.
no, no, we're all on the same level, like, or there's no levels. We're all in this together and we all get to take up space in whatever way we want to.
Yeah, I love it. And I think it's easy, obviously, for us, not easy, easier for us in the sense that we have practiced a bit more of that, visibility. And I mean, your pop-up directory in general, like, which is a whole nother topic, you're encouraging, right, people to have a place where if someone's looking for a speaker, like having their everything put together so that it's easy enough for people to find them, because visibility is also about like people finding them to collaborate and have all these things and work with them. So with that being said, you having the pop-up directory and you working with all your clients, what's the biggest struggle for people who want to be seen, who want to like make those steps to be seen? Is there anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, I think the first, like the biggest or main thing that comes to mind, and it's interesting because it applies to almost everybody, no matter what stage of their journey they are in, is a lot of the times our ego gets in the way. So it's one of those things where like you want to take up space, you want to be visible, you want to even book speaking engagements, but then you're almost sitting there just waiting for it to happen. And it's like, well, somebody, either if you're just starting out, you're like, well, somebody has to invite me, right? They have to think that I'm worthy of speaking on their platform. And even when you have the experience under your belt already, then it's almost like the narrative is like, well, I've already made it, so I should be getting asked to speak at bigger events or getting paid even more and all these things. And it's like, well, why are we just assuming that things are just going to land on our laps? Like, that
Mm,
is an incredible thing to be able to experience. But what if you actually get to make the conscious decision that speaking is actually part of your business model, and then you treat it as such, meaning that if your offers are part of your business models and your assigned clients you want to market, then speaking, you want to market your speaking as well. And that completely shifts the narrative, because instead of just waiting there and like, I don't know, coddling your ego and being like, I guess we'll just wait, or I guess we're not good enough, or people still don't think we're not like the most amazing speaker in the world. It's like, no, 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 let's champion for what we want. So you start talking about it, you start expressing more of your opinions and building that brand as a thought leader and as a speaker. That, yes, not only are you probably going to start pitching yourself more, but people will in fact start to notice more, resonate with what you're sharing in the online space in whatever marketing platforms you choose to prioritize. And then they are in fact going to start inviting you, which is what you were hoping for in the first place.
yeah. Honestly, an answer that I wouldn't have thought of and immediately, but I think it speaks towards your experience, like coaching through the challenges and struggles that can come with, presenting yourself and having that visibility component to it. Which brings up, during our initial call, you said you weren't always, you weren't always this outgoing, and or your personality has changed and evolved as well, or how you present yourself with, Steph, visibility coach and speaker. So I think that's a important and beautiful thing to point out, because I'd love to hear that part of your story. You moved to Canada, and that was a whole nother, chapter of meeting new people, adjusting to a new life, things like that. So let's dive into that a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I know we talked about this a little bit, but you're bringing back memories for me as we're having this conversation right now. And it was, I mean, for anybody that doesn't know this, which is probably everybody, because I don't think I've really talked about this before, I was so shy, like painfully shy. Like, I would not speak unless spoken to almost. And it didn't really affect me. Like, when I was younger living in Argentina, like I went to school starting from kindergarten, starting even I think before kindergarten. Like, I started with daycare because my mom worked at the school. So I literally spent 13 years going to the same establishment and making the same friends from when I was 3 years old to when I was 13. So being shy wasn't really an issue. People knew me. We were friends. I got invited everywhere. Like, I didn't have any reasons to be more either outgoing, outspoken, loud, engaging, whatever other ways you want to describe, let's say, the opposite of being shy. So it was just a natural part of me. And when we moved to Canada, my best friend at the time literally went, Steph, you have to get out of your shell. Like, you can't be shy in this new country in Canada because you need to make friends. And I was like, what do you mean? And I was like, okay, like, I clearly just received the best advice from my best friend of like however many years.
Yeah.
And I did not follow it because I didn't know how. I was like, I didn't even realize I was shy until that moment. And I was like, okay, well, new country, somewhat new language. I mean, I spoke English already, but now it was like full time. And I still, like, I struggled so much for the first couple of years, just being in that shell where I was like in that box, feeling so almost like incapable of being somebody else. Like, how do I grow? How do I expand who I am as a person when this is all I've known? And honestly, I think that move, even though I didn't realize it at the time, was like the first step in that journey to just finding my voice and rediscovering what my personality, what my identity, who I could be beyond just being so quiet and reserved. And I started moving. So we moved to Canada, then we moved to a different city. Then I started a job, so I got exposed to even more people. Then I moved again for university. And every year I had new roommates and moved to a different house. And even after that, I mean, after spending 7 years in insurance, and I moved across the country. Now I've been here in Kelowna, BC for 5 years. So I started basically for those 20 years, giving a little bit more context, I experienced so many fresh starts in every way imaginable that it slowly started chipping away at that shell and giving me new opportunities to meet new people and not really like reinvent myself, because there's nothing wrong with me originally, but just reinvent myself in the sense of like I was finding out who I was to begin with, because I was a child, barely even a teenager when I moved to Canada. So it was just a matter of meeting new people, new experiences, new countries, new cities, new schools, new environments that allowed me to just little by little get to know who I was, who I wanted to be, and find my confidence through all that.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you for sharing, because I mean, Small Biz Diaries was born out of the idea that, you know, we all have a story of obviously how we've gotten to where we've gotten to as a small business owner, entrepreneur. But my journal, my diaries have always been a safe space for me to just reflect and think about how far I've come and see what, things have evolved through the years of my own journey as well. Obviously, outside of not just my business, but just as a person, which can go hand in hand too. So I think you sharing that, and thank you again for sharing that, is just such a big part of Steph and where Steph is today. I think that all of those moments that you had to change, like where you were, your scenery, all of your external factors, just helped influence what has happened and now where you've gotten to. So I just appreciate you sharing that. And speaking of vulnerabilities and just like, peeling back the layers, as a business owner yourself, as a visibility coach and speaker, is there something that you feel as though you're struggling with right now? Obviously, you've come a long way within your own journey. So is there something that you feel as though is hard for you?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest factors that would attribute to something feeling hard in general is I've gone through a huge change recently. So I went from being an entrepreneur for 5 years, I got married, we moved across the country, like all these different milestones happened. But the biggest one so far is 11 months ago, I had a baby. And that completely changed everything, because it's a huge priority of mine now. It's what I want to spend almost all of my time on. And I think it's also like a good contrast, because it's also proving that I really love my business either enough or so much that I still want to take a part in that. But I have capped, at least for now, how many days a week I work. And I think the struggle with that is a mix of struggling with what to prioritize and what to say yes to, because I'm used to be able to say yes to literally everything. So I would always go through phases where maybe 1 month I would work, let's say 5 hours a week. And then the next month I'd be working 30 hours a week. Like, it really fluctuated based on how many projects or how many things I wanted to take on and participate in. And now with only 10 or so hours split in between 2 days, it's like, well, what do I do without letting it interfere with my clients and whatever is like a top priority? So that's one of the things that I struggle with. And then specifically within the visibility realm and speaking, is I have this pull towards wanting to myself go even bigger with speaking engagements. Like, I've done in person, I've done tons of virtual, and my heart wants to do more in person again, because I haven't for a hot second. But also it's like, well, but do I want to travel, or do I only want to do local in person? Like, what's the dynamic here? And it's so hard for me this is very fresh for me right now, to almost like struggle with navigating what am I going to do if my heart wants two very what seems like to be very different things. And I guess
Mm.
my challenge right now is figuring out, okay, what do I genuinely really, really want that I want to say yes to right now versus, let's say, in a year or so? And how do I get to potentially marry the two so that I still get to essentially have my cake and eat it too?
Yeah, cake and eat it too. Yeah. I mean, it's a reality of evolving your business and just, as I had mentioned before, evolving your business at the same time that you're growing and evolving as well. Like, you have your own goals, aspirations as a person, and then at the same time, you also have your own goals and aspirations as a business owner. Um, I think no one said that before, and I think that it's such a reality of the evolution of being a small business owner. So I love that you shared that. And I I think one of the last questions I'd love to ask you, because I feel like we've covered a good amount in the sense that obviously definitions of visibility and or public speaking and or even just putting yourself out there, understanding that there's so many different opportunities to do that might not seem as intimidating, or things that you can kind of take steps towards. We've also talked about just the fear of it itself and like where that could stem from, whether it was your upbringing or just like your story in general, and how you can maybe overcome that fear by practicing little by little and taking the steps and going and getting more familiar with that discomfort. But I think the last thing that I would love to ask you to encompass it all is, what advice would you give if someone is wanting to just start to put themselves out there more? If you had a client that comes in on day one, and what advice would you have for them?
I think it depends on where they're at in their journey, but I think what I would really focus on is to solidify their confidence. So whether it's their confidence in their mission and their message, like what they want to get out there. So we need to build that thought leadership a little bit more, because I find it's a lot easier to take up space and almost like challenge yourself, if that's what you wanted, to do bigger and scarier things when you're already so certain in what you believe in and what you want to help people with and the stories that you want to share, that there's not going to be that little voice in the back of your head being like, but we're not ready, or we don't want to talk about this, or whatever could be holding, right? Whatever stories, whatever lived experiences you might have gone through, that could still be there. And it's like, well, no, let's build that confidence a little bit more so that you're ready to now challenge yourself and do the bigger, scarier things. And if not, if that's already kind of like flushed out, what I would look at is, how do we want to present ourselves? Because if we're going to go do the thing and take up more space and book the speaking engagements, those are all opportunities to get in front of new people that have never met you before, that have never heard your story, that probably very much need to hear your perspective to feel seen and to feel either like activated to want to do something in particular, to take action in their life and their business. So if that's going to be the first encounter, then getting really clear and confident with your brand. What's your brand going to be as a speaker, as a thought leader, and how are you going to embody that as you book more speaking engagements, as you take up more space? So you can essentially feel really certain in your thought leadership, feel really certain in your brand, and then just amplify that even more as you do book those speaking engagements.
Mic drop. I just definitely think that, I mean, I resonate that with myself. Like, I've done side hustles or other things in the past that, my husband says it to me all the time. He'll be like, go talk to the vendor at the market and talk to them about your art, or go to this thrift shop and talk to them about your art. And it always felt like this daunting, like just not aligned. I almost feel like I didn't have the confidence because I didn't feel fully aligned with what I wanted out of it. Like there was a blocker, like something that was like buffering me to get from that fear to that level of confidence to walk up to that person. But on the flip side, like now with Small Biz Diaries and some of the stuff I'm doing, as soon as I see a small business owner, like I'm like, hey, I struggle with being a small business owner myself, and having these conversations has helped me. Like, I definitely think that you should start off with this episode, because if this is what you're struggling with, you're not alone. Like, it just almost like rolls off the tongue. Like, it's almost like, okay, like let me start figuring out where I can connect the dots for them. So it goes back to what you said, like the mission or the direction is so close in your heart, or so aligned with what you're wanting to do, that it almost feels like a booster in Mario Kart, and you're just like, okay, like I'm ready to go. I have a little bit more of that confidence to get me closer to where I want to go. So that was just an example to me that I think helps reiterate Steph's amazing advice. So I appreciate you breaking it down, because again, I know it does come down to where you're at. and what part of your journey you're in, but great advice for both sides.
I love that analogy. I feel like I need to just use that going forward. We all need that Super Mario Kart like boost.
Yeah, it's what came to mind. I haven't like played Mario Kart in years.
Same, but it just like that image came so vividly. I was like, that's exactly what it is.
Yep, exactly. But no, I appreciate you so much, Steph. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing everything that you've shared in the space and just your own part of your own journey as a small business owner, your own vulnerabilities that you've had to go through, ebbs and flows, which is so key to where you're at today. And I'd love to give you the opportunity to share anything that you have coming up or any way that someone can connect with you. I will be sharing everything, and you guys can take a look at the description of the video. We'll have Steph's links there, but I would love to have Steph also share anything that she'd like to share.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much again for having me. I think this has been so lovely, and the questions you asked just felt really safe and opening and loving. And I don't know, I just wanted to really, really express that with you because I love sharing that story about just my shyness and how that evolved. So thank you so much. For anybody who has just met me or you want to connect, I mean, you can always reach out on Instagram. I'm an open book. I'm always down to chat. There's a lot of things that I share on there in terms of projects, things coming up, offers, whatever that might be. But for anybody who wants to dive into the speaking realm, I do have a free resource. It's all about how to book speaking engagements. So I definitely invite you to take a look at that. And it just walks you through 4 tangible ways that you can start building your network, booking those engagements, and just starting to embrace your speaker identity in whatever way you want to and feel comfortable to right now.
Love it. Yay. I'm excited for people to connect with you. Check her out. She has a lot going on all the time, which is great because it just provides opportunities for you to connect with her. But I also have attended her co-working network fiestas, and I 10 out of 10 recommend. It's like the perfect combination of co-working and chatting. And if there are weeks where you just want to co-work or weeks where you just want to chat, I feel like it allows you that flexibility. So I want to drop that one in there as well on my end.
Appreciate that. It's funny because when we're recording this, it's literally Tuesday. So we just had a fiesta. So I'm kind of on that energy vibing. I've been so productive, even mapped out a bunch of my own podcast content. So yes, anybody that wants to get stuff done and make new biz besties, you're more than welcome to join us.
Amazing. Thank you, Steph. I appreciate it.